My wife says I haven't done enough to fix our marriage after she cheated on me, but she doesn't find it funny when I ask if she's done enough when she's the one who cheated. Hello, everyone. I want to share my story and hear your opinions because lately, everyone seems to be telling me I'm the bad guy for what I've done. When, as far as I believe, I haven't done anything wrong. To start, I'm 29, and my wife is 27. We met in college when I was in my last year. She was that bright, charismatic girl who always had everyone around her. But honestly, I wasn't even looking to date anyone at the time. I was more focused on graduating and getting into the workforce. But, well, life happens, right? We met because we were both volunteers in an environmental project at the university. I was planting trees, thinking it would be a quiet afternoon, when she showed up. She literally tripped over me while trying to plant a tree, something I had never done before in my life, laughing like nothing had happened. We started talking, and before I knew it, we were exchanging numbers. A week later, I asked her out in the least romantic way possible. She laughed and told me it wasn't the smoothest invitation she'd ever gotten, but she accepted it. After 5 years of dating, I decided to propose. I'm not great at big public gestures, so I went for something simple but meaningful. We went to the same park where we had our first date, and while she was distracted playing with a dog, I knelt down and proposed. She almost knocked me over with excitement, and because the dog decided to jump on me at that moment. We got married 3 years ago, and since then, I thought we had a good life together. However, 4 months ago, everything changed. Turns out my wife was cheating on me, and not with just anyone, but with a client she met at work. She works with clients, so she interacts with a lot of people during the day. I'm not a jealous guy, nor did I control what she did at work. I trusted her. The worst part is how I found out. One day, I was looking for my headphones, and I happened to see her phone on the dining table. I know it sounds cliché, but I swear I wasn't looking for anything in particular. I just wanted to check the time, but when I picked it up, a calendar notification popped up. What did the notification say? Meeting with followed by the client's name. The weirdest part was that this was at 9 p.m., with a wine emoji. I don't know about you, but I've never had a work meeting with wine at that time. So I started investigating, and after a quick search through her chat with the client, since I know her lock code, I realized what was going on. Turns out that meeting had been planned for weeks, and it wasn't the first one. They already had a pretty explicit message history that left no doubt. They were even talking about how to make sure they didn't leave any traces. That was the moment everything clicked in my head. My wife, whom I loved, was cheating on me in the most ridiculous way possible. That same day, I packed my things and went to a hotel. I only told her via text that I knew about her and her client, and that I was leaving. Basically, so she wouldn't look for me when she got home. There was no argument that could fix what had happened. So I preferred not to confront her because nothing good would come out of it, and it wouldn't solve anything. When someone breaks your trust like that, for me, there's no going back. The apartment we lived in was a rental, and we each paid our half of the expenses. So I didn't see the need to stay there, especially because, from that moment on, I couldn't stop thinking that she could have brought her lover there at any time. I even started wondering if there had been others. If I discovered this by accident, how many other mistakes could she have made without me knowing? It was an idea I couldn't bear. The day after I moved out, I talked to a lawyer and filed for divorce. In my mind, there was nothing else to do. What we had was already broken, and there was no way I could forgive her. I wanted to end the matter as soon as possible and move on with my life. This is where things started to get even weirder. After I left, I started getting messages from my wife. At first, they weren't anything major, just asking where I was and why I had left without discussing it. This is where I responded with something sarcastic, something like, "Did you want me to stay to see your PowerPoint of excuses?" "No, thanks." She insisted that the fair thing would have been for me to stay so we could talk about it, and that she couldn't believe I had just up and left like that. Look, she cheated on me. What else did we need to discuss? Then came the second phase of her strategy. She told me that, actually, she wanted an open marriage, and I shouldn't be so upset. Apparently, what happened with her client wasn't infidelity, but exploration. This is when I kind of exploded. I told her she couldn't unilaterally decide that she wanted an open marriage and think I would just go along with it. She asked me if, had she consulted me, I would have agreed to the idea. My response was pretty simple, not a chance. If she wanted to explore new things, great, but not with me. The next thing she tried was to suggest couples therapy. According to her, I needed help to deal with my problems with infidelity. Yes, you read that right. I had problems with infidelity. I made it clear to her that I didn't need to resolve anything. The only problem here was that she had betrayed our trust, and the only people who needed to resolve something now were the lawyers. For a while, she stopped insisting on fixing things, although I found out that she officially started dating the client she cheated on me with, which I find ironic because she was desperate to save the marriage, but she probably only wanted me to forgive her so she could keep seeing him behind my back. Maybe she was trying to learn from her mistakes so she wouldn't get caught next time. I don't know. The truth is, honestly, I don't care who she's with now. It's not my business. However, a couple of weeks ago, she said something that disgusted me. She told me that if I had tried to fix the marriage, she would have chosen me, as if everything now depended on what I would have done. That left me stunned because the truth is, I don't want her back. I don't want to fight for her. And if that makes me a bad husband or someone who doesn't fight for his marriage, so be it. I would have fought for her if she hadn't cheated on me, but I'm not going to fight for someone who's already betrayed me. I wouldn't even get up from the couch, even if there was nothing good on TV, to fight for her. The worst part is that some of my friends have been telling me that I should have tried to save the marriage. That being modern and open-minded is what's expected nowadays. I respect that they have that opinion, but I don't see anything to save here, except maybe custody of a cactus plant we bought together. Of course, at one point, I made a very serious proposal to them. I told them that if they truly believed in being open and modern, I could sleep with their wives, or with them, in the case of my female friends, and then they could tell me how the experience went, to see if that would help them be more open-minded. So far, none of them have accepted my modern offer. I was even ready to offer something extra, like paying for dinner if they were willing to negotiate. But that's where their modernity ended. And here I am, asking you all, am I the bad guy for not fighting for my marriage like everyone's telling me? Or is my wife delusional and my friends hypocrites? Update 1. I'm back after a week to update you on how things have progressed. As I read through the responses, I realized that many people agreed with me. There was no reason to fight for a marriage where I had been betrayed. Although some insisted I should fight, common sense and logic prevailed. Most said there was nothing worth fighting for, which someone could tell my ex, because she certainly doesn't listen to me. It's funny how, even when things seem so clear, there are always people who think you should make an effort, or that love can overcome anything. And honestly, I respect those opinions, but I think there's a very clear limit when we're talking about cheating and disrespect. How can you fight for something that's already been crushed by betrayal? Anyway, to the point. Recently, we had our first hearing as part of the divorce process. We came face to face again. I was prepared for a short and professional exchange of words, but, as always, my ex, or soon-to-be ex, had other ideas. The first thing she did was try to talk to me before the hearing started. Honestly, I thought it would just be about some details of the legal process, but no. Turns out what she wanted, again, was to ask me to reconsider everything and that we could still fight for our marriage. Imagine my face at that moment. I told her we had already talked about this, that there was no going back, and I asked her directly if she was still with her client, the guy she cheated on me with. Instead of trying to deny it or make up some excuse, she told me the truth. Yes, I'm with him. But that doesn't mean I wouldn't choose you first if you were willing to make an effort. She said it like it was the most normal thing in the world. I want you to stop for a moment and really think about that. According to her, even though she's still with her lover, I should feel flattered because if I made an effort, she would choose me. I bit my tongue to keep from laughing in her face. Instead of exploding like I really wanted to, I asked her, with all the sarcasm I could muster, if she would choose me first now, why didn't she choose me when she decided to cheat on me? Her response was something worthy of a psychological study. She looked at me and said, with total sincerity, I wanted to have an affair, but that doesn't change the fact that you've always been first. According to her, having an affair was just an exploration, something that didn't affect her love for me, which had always been her first choice. Honestly, I don't know what world my ex lives in, but it's definitely not one where logic and coherence exist. To me, this all sounds absolutely ridiculous. How can someone who betrayed me tell me I'm the first? If she truly considered me first, she wouldn't have done what she did. Even so, her way of thinking is so confusing, it almost seems worthy of being studied in some kind of thesis on narcissism or emotional manipulation. It seems like, in her mind, her desire to explore with others has nothing to do with her love for me, as if they're completely separate things. Anyway, I stood my ground and sarcastically told her that, while I felt flattered to be the first on her personal ranking, I was going to have to decline that amazing offer. I explained that I, too, am the first in my own life. And that's why I'm choosing myself instead of a narcissist who thinks she can have everything and everyone on her terms. That was the conversation before we went into the room with the lawyers. By that point, I was already pretty fed up with her twisted logic, but things didn't end there. During the meeting with the lawyers, her attitude changed in a pretty strange way. The whole time, While we discussed the terms of the divorce, she had an expression on her face like I was the villain, as if what I was doing by divorcing her was a crime. I could see how her jaw clenched every time one of our lawyers talked about some financial detail or the division of assets. It was very uncomfortable, but also somewhat amusing to me, because her attitude didn't make any sense. I wonder if her annoyance was simply because things weren't going the way she wanted. Maybe, in her mind, I should have stayed, forgiven her, fought for our marriage while she continued her parallel life. In her mind, being the first is just a manipulation tactic to make everything revolve around her and what she wants. When she says she chooses me, it doesn't come from a place of love or genuine remorse. It comes from a place where she's always the protagonist and decides how her life should be and how others should adjust to her vision of things. I wonder if she'll ever be capable of understanding that relationships don't work that way. After that meeting, I don't know if we'll see each other again outside of court, but honestly, I don't care. See you in the next update, if there is one. Update 2. I'm back, and this time it's to share some great news. I'm officially divorced, and let me tell you, it's a feeling of relief that I can't even describe. The hearings are over, the awkward encounters with my ex, or better said, the self-proclaimed narcissist, are done, and so is all that legal mess that seemed never-ending. Now, I can happily say that I've closed that chapter and I'm ready to move on. First things first, I know some of you were wondering if I managed to keep the cactus, and the answer is yes. In the end, the cactus came with me. I guess it was the one thing she didn't want to fight over in the divorce process, probably because her client lover explorer isn't a big fan of plants. Of all the material things we had in common, it was the only thing I really cared about keeping. Although I have to admit, it wasn't so much about the cactus itself, but about the principle of the matter. It's a small symbolic victory. After all, if I'm starting a new chapter in my life, what better companion than a plant that can survive in extreme conditions, just like me? Though, to be honest, the only reason I wanted the cactus is because it needs very little water. Any other kind of plant would have died under my care within a week. Many of you also asked about my so-called friends, the ones who thought it was noble and brave to fight for a cheating woman. Well, I haven't told the full story yet, but they're no longer my friends. I thought I made it clear with my brave and noble proposal, but I'll clarify it here. In my previous post, I mentioned how, in a moment of sarcasm and a bit of frustration, I proposed to these so-called progressive friends that if they were so open, maybe we should explore the idea of me sleeping with their wives, or with them, in the case of my female friends, to see how they like the modern approach. In my mind, the offer was so ridiculous that no one would take it seriously. But, surprise, they did. Not in the way I thought, of course. Their reaction wasn't remotely funny. They looked at each other as if I had just proposed a human sacrifice in the middle of the room. At first, I thought they were processing the sarcasm, but no, they were outraged. One of them, in particular, the one who used to be the most laid-back and chill guy in the group, got so serious that I almost felt like I had insulted his mother. He looked at me and said something like, "Do you really think that's funny? This is a serious matter, and what you're suggesting is immature and offensive." Honestly, I couldn't believe what I was hearing. They can suggest I fight for a marriage with someone who cheated on me, but they can't handle a small dose of their own medicine? After that awkward conversation, things got even more tense. They started distancing themselves from me, little by little. You know how friend circles are when someone starts avoiding you. The group hangouts decreased, the messages in the group chat became scarcer, and eventually, they disappeared altogether. The funniest, or saddest thing, depending on how you look at it, is that they didn't even say a formal goodbye. They just stopped inviting me to things, as if my awkward joke had been the straw that broke the camel's back. So, there you have it. I no longer have those friends who recommended I fight for something that wasn't worth it. And honestly, I think they did me a favor. After all, who wants to be surrounded by people who don't respect your decisions and ask you to sacrifice your dignity for the sake of a failed relationship? Plus, they weren't my closest friends, but rather a group that were friends of the couple. So I guess they chose my wife's side in the divorce, and that's that. Speaking of moving on, one of the best parts of this process is the possibility of finding someone new. Someone who won't cheat on me and then expect me to fight for the marriage as if I'm the bad guy. I'm feeling pretty optimistic about the future. I mean, there have to be normal people out there, right? People who understand that monogamy isn't an outdated concept and who won't ask you to forgive the unforgivable in the name of personal growth. In this post-divorce time, I've gone on a few casual dates, nothing serious yet, but it's a start. After everything that happened, I'm not looking to jump into a relationship right away. I'm taking my time, meeting new people, and enjoying my independence and the little things I used to take for granted. And yes, I know some of you might be wondering, but what about your ex? Has she tried to contact you since the divorce? Well, yes, there have been one or two messages from her. Small things like, "How are you?" Or, "Did you take the book we bought together?" The surprising thing is that none of those messages mention the cactus, which leads me to believe she didn't even remember it existed. Of course, I ignored all those messages. So, here I am, free, with my cactus, and ready to move on with my life. Update 3. It's been a while since my last update, but here I am, a year and a half after my divorce, to tell you how things are going. And yes, before you ask, the cactus is still alive. I know many of you were more worried about the cactus than about me. It's not like it's a plant with much personality, but it's there, still green, and hasn't complained about the spot I placed it in my new house. At least not obviously, right? It hasn't sent me smoke signals or appeared in my dreams to tell me it's sad. As far as I can tell, it's doing fine, although I have to admit I'm not the best at caring for plants. If the cactus has ever been depressed, it's hidden it from me pretty well. Now, to the real news. In this time, I've met someone, and things are going pretty well. We've been dating for a while now, long enough for the conversation about my ex to come up more than once. And the best part is that after telling her the whole story, yes, including the part about the cactus and my progressive friends, someone was bound to ask, she looked at me and said that I'm definitely not the bad guy in this story. Honestly, hearing those words was a relief. Even though I was pretty confident in my stance, it's nice to know that someone new, someone with an outside perspective, doesn't think I'm a monster just for not fighting for a relationship with someone who cheated on me. In fact, she was the one who suggested doing a small survey among her friends, and no one thought there was anything worth fighting for. So, I can check that off my list of requirements for a new relationship. That, and the fact that she likes cacti. However, not everything has been perfect. A couple of days ago, I had an unexpected encounter with my ex-wife. It turns out my girlfriend and I adopted a dog, and while I was walking him in the park one day, there she was. I would have liked to just turn around and avoid the awkwardness, but at that moment, my dog decided it was the perfect time to do his business. And well, it's not like I could abandon my loyal companion while he was busy behind a nearby tree. So there we were, face to face, and I knew there was no escape. My ex came over to say hello, with that polite tone people use when you haven't seen them in a long time, but also never wanted to see them again. You know, that conversation full of formalities and empty questions like, "How are you?" Or, "How's everything going?" I, too, fell into that trap and returned the question out of pure courtesy. Big mistake. Turns out my ex didn't understand that it was just a polite question, not an invitation to tell me her life story since we separated. While my dog stared at me, as if asking when we'd be done and when we were going home for his nap, my ex started listing a long set of things that weren't going well for her. I won't bore you with the details because most of what she said didn't interest me, and I'm sure it wouldn't interest you either. The only interesting thing was when she mentioned that things hadn't worked out with her client. Apparently, and here's the ironic part, he cheated on her. The guy she cheated on me with ended up doing the same thing to her. At that moment, the best thing would have been to leave, but I stayed a little longer because, deep down, I'm a bit of a masochist and I wanted to see how far it would go. And that's when I couldn't resist asking her something. I asked, was he exploring too? She looked at me with complete confusion and asked, "What?" So, I took the liberty of clarifying, maybe you didn't fight hard enough for your relationship. Maybe if you had, he would have chosen you because he considered you his first. Her reaction was pure gold. She looked at me as if I'd just told her the cruelest joke in the world, but I was completely serious. For some reason, just like my former friends, she didn't like what she was hearing. After exchanging a few awkward glances and noticing that my dog had finished his business and was just as ready to leave as I was, I told her that my girlfriend was waiting for me for dinner. I politely said goodbye and walked away with my dog. And that, my friends, is how my story continues. Update 4. It's been quite a while, exactly 2 years, since my last update. Honestly, I didn't plan on writing another one, but after all the support I received in my previous posts, I thought I should stop by and share how life is going. And the answer, although a bit predictable, is that everything is going pretty well. I'm still with the same girlfriend. My dog has now learned the signal when we need to make a quick getaway together, and my cactus is still surviving, despite having me as its caretaker. Though my girlfriend has also helped with that. But don't worry, I haven't had to use the escape plan yet because I haven't run into my ex again in the park while walking the dog. That hasn't stopped me, however, from running into my ex on the street while doing some shopping. I was walking along the sidewalk when suddenly, I saw her. There was my ex, on the same sidewalk, just a few meters away. My first instinct was panic, I'll admit, but then I remembered that, Unlike the time in the park, this time I was alone. No dog busy doing his business, no reason to stop for anything. This meant I could plan the perfect escape route. So, I did what any sensible person in my situation would do. I quickly crossed the street. Yes, I darted to the other side of the street as if my life depended on it. The best part is, I think I was pretty convincing in my "I didn't see you" performance. Even though I saw her from the corner of my eye waving at me, I stuck to my strategy of looking the other way as if I was lost in deep thoughts. Now, the funny thing is, if for some reason she realized that I did see her and just decided not to greet her, well, I think that's for the best for both of us.